Friday's Times and gender clinics in Scotland. Leo, I know you're going to have a few things to say about this.
Yeah, so this is Scottish gender clinic staff tried to blow the whistle over the safety. We were talking the other day about Scotland's only gender clinic for children, the Sandyford Sexual Health Hub in Glasgow. So red flags have been formally raised by members of the clinical team over the last 5 years, according to newly released documents that have been released due to a Freedom of Information report. So the clinic is basically Scotland's equivalent of the Tavistock Centre that was shut down in London because it was, it was railroading children into gender treatment, and there were, I think, over 1,000 families of children who regretted the process, adults as well. They, felt that they were sort of mistreated, misdiagnosed.
Or the gender dysphoria was simply affirmed. There was no other exploratory therapy.
Yeah, they take an affirmation-only approach. So, and they've been treating children as young as 9 years old, which is just insane. Giving puberty blockers to 9-year-olds. So a 9-year-old presents saying, I think I'm a girl, or I think I'm a boy, and instead of being like, well, that's great, dear. Here's some chewing gum and a whistle. Go and play outside. They're like, OK, let's schedule the surgery. It's absolute insanity.
Simon, can I ask you about this? Because this feels like an echo, as Leo says, of the Tavistock. Because in this case as well, whistleblowers are saying that they wanted to raise concerns, but they felt they couldn't because they would be branded as transphobic. So this feels like it's repeating itself.
I think it is repeating itself. I think it's in a slightly different context, though, which is also in the context of the legislation that's going through the Scottish Parliament, which looks like it will go through, which means that self-ID will be put into law. And my position on that has always been, my problem with self-ID is that actually it's an entirely subjective concept. So therefore it's untestable. So there's a bit in the GRA, for instance, that says if you lie about your self-ID, then you will be punished. But actually it's untestable. You can't test whether somebody's going to lie about it. So I think the problem with all this is, and particularly in relation to kids, is the whole point about growing up and understanding the difficulties you have as you encounter the world and trying to work out who you are and so on and so forth. What you need is support to make the right choices. So, there will be a very small number of people, I suspect, who will experience dysphoria to the extent that actually surgery will be something that in the end is a contribution to solving that. But actually the idea that you affirm, and I mean the Tavistock, we go back to that, a bunch of the people who were in the Tavistock have now written a totally self-serving letter in which they say, oh no, affirming doesn't mean one predetermined choice. No, it means exploration. You go, well, it didn't mean exploration.
No, that's a terrible letter.
According to the whistleblowers and the others. So I just feel that what I want is these clinics, and it's reflected now in the NHS and the new NHS guidance. I want these clinics and these practitioners to offer kids the choices that they need to make the right path in their life. That's all I want.
Part of the point of gender dysphoria is, and when you proceed to medicalisation, is that it has to be persistent, that sense. But how can it be persistent if you're dealing with children?
Well, I'm not a clinical expert. All I can say is that it seems to me curious that you get your authenticity by surgery and hormones and drugs. It feels to me like one's authenticity needs to be discovered through understanding who you are as you are in the world.
Leo, can I ask you about this, though? Because, the SNP, as Simon has said, pushing through their sort of gender reforms, they seem to be ignoring the advice from the Cass report. I mean, they've effectively said explicitly, England NHS are saying we need to be a bit more cautious when it comes to this gender affirmative approach. Scotland are saying, forget about it.
The SNP do that with all English advice.
On a matter of principle.
Yeah, on principle, they will deliberately defy anything that comes out of Westminster or anything that's seen as English. The SNP is basically Scotland's a one-party state. There's no real feasible strong opposition in Scotland, and they're really beholden to progressive politics. They think it makes them look kind and look noble and gives them a differentiator to encourage people to want to leave the UK, because they're saying we'll create this wonderful state where everybody has their rights. But the thing is, the phrase transactivism can hide good things and some bad things as well. And I think when you're talking about medicalising and putting 9-year-old children on a pathway to surgery, that's definitely something you need to tread very carefully with.
But how can that be framed as good? I mean, the whole point, surely, of this kind of stuff is it has to be evidence-led. And the evidence tells us that the vast majority of kids who struggle with gender dysphoria or a sense of gender dysphoria will have that reconciled naturally through puberty, right? So that's the evidence.
Yes, but I think that if you're going... I agree with you, but if you're going to argue this this notion of self-ID and that this notion of authenticity comes from this idea that you have an identity that you discover, which is yours and you've determined, then in a sense that notion of the external evidence pales into its significance because you're back to this idea of the true self and so on. And this is, look, I think we need to be clear about this. What's happening in that sense, this idea that it's an identity that you need to discover, that doesn't just happen in relation to this issue. I mean, this is the whitewashing of politics through individuality, and that comes, I think, from neoliberal economics that tells you you're an independent agent in the economy and you can decide where you are. It also comes from the kind of notion of well-being and therapy and the idea that actually all that matters is your own happiness.
Well, it comes from lived experience, this thing that we keep hearing again and again. That's about your truth.
Your truth, but ultimately, I feel that we've lost the sense of the common good. So the idea of the common good is that you argue about things and you reach solutions, and that way, actually, the maximum number of us are happy. So what I feel, this is a kind of ultimate bit of individualism, and I find it's very destructive.
It's the opposite of individualism because it's looking at children and saying, like, look, you've got this dysphoria, or we think you've got this dysphoria. You think you've got this dysphoria. It might just be autism. Might just be the replacement for anorexia or bulimia, or these things that gender dysphoria has replaced. And it's saying we're going to use this treatment to solve it.